Week 152 of Brada's Brandon Thoughts, and we want to welcome all of our listeners who maybe have transitioned over to a YouTube app or your browser to watch us on our debut here on YouTube. This is new to us. I'm joined by John Orgias, who has helped make all of this possible. We're talking Iowa basketball this evening and breaking down the Big Ten tournament, which of course we know starts on Wednesday, right around the corner. We're finally there, back to March Madness, something that we've been missing for now, 2 years after it was taken away last year due to COVID. We're talking about Iowa. We're talking about Iowa's game yesterday versus, we're recording this late on Monday evening. We're talking about Iowa's game against Wisconsin yesterday. Iowa with an impressive win and a come from behind victory, a game where they were down by 4 late in the contest and found a way to get it done against the Wisconsin Badgers. And first of all, before we get into discussion about the Big Ten tournament, we're going to talk about which teams project well. We're not bracketologists here, but certainly we can talk about seeding now that we're finally a week away from Selection Sunday and the NCAA tournament beginning. But before we get to that, we do want to talk about Iowa's performance yesterday. Sort of an up and down game, especially emotionally for Iowa fans and even for the Iowa players. Iowa getting off to a quick start. By the way, it was senior day, so Luka Garza, Jordan Bohannon, a couple walk-ons, Austin Nash, Michael Bear, both experiencing senior day festivities yesterday. But it was an emotional day from the get-go. Joe Wieskamp starts off hot, makes, I believe, 5 of 5 or 6 of 6 from the field, scores 12 quick points, and then rolls his ankle. And if you want to see a perfect L, John, go back and watch Joe Wieskamp turn his ankle. It was brutal. The good news is it did not look like a high ankle sprain. I'm not a medical, I'm not a physician. I'm certainly not a person that can diagnose anything. So you hope you get Joe back, but he leaves early, and that was kind of a blow, I think, to everybody. And you hate to lose a guy, especially the last game of the regular season before you get to postseason play. But it's better than losing them during one of the two big tournaments for Iowa. But Iowa got right back on that horse. I mean, Keegan Murray really stepped up yesterday. Defensively, Iowa played really well in the first half. I thought gave Wisconsin a little bit too much in the second half. Ball screen defense was still a problem for Luka Garza and company. You know, that's going to be an issue that we're just going to have to live with. I think we know that by now. It's been impressive, the turnaround defensively that we've seen from the Hawks over the past month and 3 days or so. I believe everybody keeps talking about February 5th kind of being that turnaround date, and that's fine. Iowa has been really good since then. Again, second half wasn't great, but Iowa got the job done. Jordan Bohannon was spectacular. I'm a guy who I like to call it how I see it. I've dogged on Jordan Bohannon for his lack of on-ball defense. I've dogged on him for his lack of athleticism, something that he can't really change, but it's just a fact that Jordan Bohannon is not a great athlete. But he was spectacular yesterday, making plays on both ends. And I just want to give him a shout out on the defensive end for this entire season. He has had moments, just like everybody on this team, where he has failed to live up to the expectations on the defensive end. And I mean expectations in that we're talking top 50. This team wants to get to the Final Four or Elite Eight. I think we all agree they need to be a top 50 defense, and he hasn't always met that. But yesterday, and for the majority of this season, he has worked his tail off on the defensive end. And you could just tell in the last 5 minutes of the game yesterday that Jordan Bohannon was not going to let this team lose. And Luka Garza was spectacular as well. But those two guys, what a performance late. Bohannon hitting some big free throws late in the game. And again, getting the job done when it counted. You would have just hated for Iowa. First of all, they would have dropped to a 4 seed in the Big Ten tournament, which we'll talk about seeding. That certainly would not have helped them because then you're in the section with Ohio State. You probably would have played the Buckeyes on Friday. And I don't know if you favor Iowa in that game or not at this point. Certainly, I would favor Iowa to get to the semis if you look at the bracket today as a result of the win yesterday. But it was not a game that was going to take them out of the double bye consideration or probably move them down a seed line in the NCAA tournament. But you hate to go into tournament play on a loss, especially against a Wisconsin team that, you know, Jordan Bohannon's been very outspoken about his angst, if you will, for Wisconsin not recruiting him. A kid whose brother brothers, I believe brothers played at Wisconsin. I can't remember. Matt played at UNI. I'm trying to think of where Jason and I think Jason played at Wisconsin. Anyways, he's got these strong ties to Wisconsin. They never recruited him, and simply came out there and took care of business yesterday the way you want to see your seniors take care of business. And of course, after the game, very emotional scene with Luka Garza, him receiving the announcement that he would have his jersey retired, and the emotion on his face. That's what makes great sports great, when you watch that video back of Luka tearing up and hearing that news from his coach and from his AD. Certainly he is well deserving of that honor, which will happen at the end of the season. So it was a good day. Again, it was an up and down day with Joe Wieskamp's injury, but they got the win. Luka Garza going to get the jersey retirement. They won on senior day, and they're going to be going into the tournament this week on a good note. John, I know we kind of talked. You are trying to sort of immerse yourself in March Madness and in college basketball and what it's like. And you're what, a 50-year-old guy? And here you are really starting it from scratch as it relates to March Madness. And I was trying to explain it to you, and we're talking math, we're talking analytics, we're talking resumes. It's sort of old pat for someone like me, but you think you got a good handle on it for this discussion?
Yeah, I think I'm getting it. It's kind of funny, Robin's cousin also said I'd probably like sports if I actually got into it because of all the statistics and stuff. Because I do like numbers, but I could never get into sports. But after so many conversations with you, it's actually becoming a little alluring.
I could see you, and I know you don't know who this is because you're up until now you haven't followed bracketology, but I could see you be the next Joe Lunardi, Jerry Palm, Shelby Mast, one of these guys that's literally all they do. They don't talk strategy. They really don't talk basketball. They talk resumes, they talk seeding, and they talk tournament. And that's really what, they get employed by. I mean, heck, Joe Lunardi, and I know some people have kind of downplayed the real skill that it takes to be a bracketologist, but I just know some of these analytics that people are really into. I love my Hawks, but to sit there and compare how many quad one wins Iowa has with quad one wins for, North Carolina State, and then, they've got a 106 strength of schedule. Iowa has a 92. And to measure, and then how do you measure all this together? So I want to make that disclaimer for everybody. I am by no means, obviously, John's not claiming to be an expert. I am not claiming to be an expert as it relates to bracketology. But we are going to talk about brackets, and we're going to talk about what Iowa needs to do to be able to position themselves well for next week and moving on, so that Iowa can make a run. I think we'd all agree that for Iowa to meet expectations this year, they need to win games in March Madness. You don't win in the tournament, it's an unsuccessful season. It's a disappointing season from the player's standpoint. It's got to be that way from the coach's standpoint, and certainly from the fans' perspective. So I guess we'll start out with this. John, you've got some questions for me. We're going to kind of reverse roles for our podcast this week. So you're going to ask me some questions, and we're going to kind of use this as a learning experience for you as well. So let's start out with the Big Ten bracket.
Yeah, now that got here. Yeah. Now that it's, I've been looking at it here and reviewing it and got a pretty good grasp of what it all means at this point. But from looking at what is out now, who do you think's got the best draw?
That's a good question. I mean, and it's a different question from who do I think is going to win the tournament? Because if I had to say who the hottest team, the Big Ten tournament's interesting because you look at the regular season and who finishes in first place. Obviously, Michigan finished in first place. They didn't have to play as many games as Illinois. I think if they had, they probably still would have finished in first place. We'll never know. But they won the regular season title. But the Big Ten tournament title is really different. And this isn't a hard concept to grasp, John. Whoever can play best and whoever's the hottest over the course of 4 or 5 days is going to win the tournament. That doesn't mean you're the best team from November to March, but it means that you're the best team from March 11th through March 14th or 15th, whatever it is. So I think that's a good question that you ask. Who has the best draw? I would say at this point, looking at this, that a team like Iowa has a pretty good draw. Now, you can call me a homer if you want. That's fine. If I'm looking at the top 4 teams, I don't want to be Purdue right now because Ohio State's dangerous. I still think Minnesota's dangerous. They're struggling right now. In fact, I think Rick Pitino, I keep saying Rick, his dad. Richard Pitino could be on his way out in Minneapolis. Even Northwestern's playing well. I mean, they won a game yesterday in impressive fashion. So I would have to say Purdue is not even in the consideration. Certainly Michigan's not in the consideration because you got a red-hot Michigan State team who, by the way, just beat Michigan yesterday. So certainly they wouldn't be my pick. It would have to come down to Illinois and Iowa. I think you could make the argument towards Illinois. First of all, they're playing the best basketball of anybody right now in the Big Ten. Indiana is struggling. Rutgers is struggling. I still think both of those teams have firepower, similar to how I view a Wisconsin or a Penn State. So I'd probably go Iowa at this point. I think Iowa's got the best draw. Does that mean they'll fulfill it? Absolutely not, but I think they've got the best draw.
All right. Yeah, I can see that. As you were discussing it just now, I was also looking at the brackets here, and it's all, like I say, it's new to me, but it's starting to make sense. And the more we talk about it, the more I can make heads or tails of it. So the other question I had was, and you kind of brushed on this a little bit, but what do you think of Iowa's path to the championship?
Well, it's better again. It's better than being in the position of Purdue where you're playing a red hot Buckeyes. Well, I shouldn't say red hot. They've lost some games, but a much more talented Ohio State team. I mean, I think all Iowa fans, what we want to see is Iowa Illinois in the semifinals on Saturday. Now, whether or not that will happen, we don't know. I mean, again, Indiana Rutgers could beat Illinois on Friday night, but I think their path to a championship is you beat Illinois. I would probably take Iowa regardless of who the opponent is on Sunday. Okay? Because when I look at, again, going back to Illinois being the hottest team in the Big Ten, when I look at the turnaround from Iowa's game on Friday night, and by the way, we haven't talked about that. Iowa will play at about 8 o'clock on Friday night, give or take a few minutes based on how soon that Illinois game ends. Iowa will play the late game on Friday night. All right. Then they will come back and play a 2:30 p.m. game on Saturday. That is a very short rest. So I understand, I think Iowa's equipped to do that. Certainly the Joe Wieskamp injury is going to be something to follow. But if Iowa can somehow find a way to win Friday night against probably Wisconsin and then beat Illinois in a short turnaround, I think you'd have to pick the Hawkeyes to win on Sunday, even if it was Michigan, especially if Joe Wieskamp is back. But I think the path for Iowa is get Joe Wieskamp healthy. I don't see him. I don't know how severe the sprain is. I don't see him sitting out, but if he's not ready, he's not ready. But get him healthy, and I think you treat that Illinois game. Not that you don't fixate yourself on the game on Friday night, but that Illinois game is going to certainly. I think the winner of that game is my favorite to win on Sunday.
All right. Yeah, I can see that. So I lost my question. Hold on. Just all right. So we're getting to, I've only got 2 more. So who do you think can help or hurt their NCAA tournament positioning by how who do you think is going to, if it goes south for them, who do you think is going to hurt themselves the most, and who do you think is going to help themselves the most? I guess is what I'm trying to ask.
That's a good question. I think the Big Ten the tournament is a little less consequential for NCAA tournament positioning and seeding than I originally thought it would be, and that's simply because when you look at the top, Michigan, Illinois, right now most bracketologists, and I say bracketologists again, I'm referring to Joe Lunardi, Jerry Palm, Mike DeCourcy of Fox Sports. When you look at the NCAA tournament and the top line, the 4 number 1 seeds, most pundits would agree Gonzaga is the overall number 1, Baylor's the overall number 2, and then you can kind of go back and forth. Michigan and Illinois are 3 and 4. I don't see any movement after that. So I don't see Iowa moving ahead of Illinois, regardless of what Iowa does and regardless of what Illinois does. For instance, Illinois loses their first game on Friday against either Indiana or Rutgers. Not a good loss, but not a bad loss. It's not going to do much to their resume. And okay, Iowa wins out. That'd be great. I just don't think it'll be enough to move them onto that one line. And you look at a team like Michigan. Could they possibly lose their spot on the one line? Absolutely not. They got Michigan State and Maryland. Either one of those teams would be I don't want to call it a good loss because no loss is a good loss, but it certainly wouldn't be a bad loss. I think once you get past the one line, again, I don't think there's much movement for anybody to move in or out of that one range. When you look past that one line, there certainly is movement possible. I don't think Iowa would drop from a 2, even if you lose to Wisconsin. Now, if Iowa loses, say Nebraska beats Penn State, Nebraska beats Wisconsin, Iowa loses to Nebraska, which, I mean, first of all, I don't see Nebraska beating Penn State or Wisconsin, let alone Iowa. But if that were to happen, maybe Iowa could slip down a couple spots, but would probably still be on that 2 line. So I don't know. I think you'd have to go further down the seed lines to be able to find someone whose resume could get hurt. I think if Ohio State reasonably, probably the team that could lose the most, John, would be like a Ohio State if they were to fall to like a Northwestern, even a Minnesota. That opening game on Thursday, that could potentially move them down to a 3 line. I think they're probably a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament as of right now. So that could happen. Certainly, teams with the most to gain, Michigan State, I think they're in no matter what they do. But if they can win at least a game in the Big Ten tournament, they're in the field of 68 as probably a 12 seed. They may have to play in a first 4 game those opening couple of days of the tournament. Indiana, I think they're out right now, absolutely out. Minnesota's absolutely out right now. Northwestern's out. Nebraska's out. Penn State is out. So obviously, the way this works, if you win the Big Ten tournament, John, and this is something that I don't know if you were made aware of, if you win your conference tournament, whether you play in the Big Ten, whether you play in the SEC, whatever, you win your conference tournament, it does not matter what your overall resume was in from November to March. You get an automatic bid to the NCAA tournament. So that's the thrill for a team like Nebraska, who's had an abysmal season. That's the thrill for a team like Nebraska. They know that, hey, it's unlikely, but if we can win 5 games in 5 days, we're in the big dance. We're in March Madness. So, yeah, I mean, I think obviously that could happen. I don't see it happening. I don't see Minnesota, Northwestern, Nebraska, or Penn State, or Indiana doing that. If I was to pick one team out of those 5, it would probably be a Minnesota, simply because I think they have the most talent, but they've had injury issues. And I don't know the status of Gabe Kalsher, Liam Robbins, and those guys who have been out, or probably, Indiana, maybe. But again, it takes a lot to win a Big Ten tournament, especially for a team that, take Minnesota, for instance, they'd have to win 5 games in 5 days. At least Indiana got the single bye, so they don't have to play until Thursday. But I just don't see that happening. So, and maybe Wisconsin, I don't know where they're projected. They're probably like a 4 or 5 seed right now in the NCAA tournament. They could probably say they win the Big Ten tournament. They could probably move up a seed line. I don't know. I don't really know how consequential the movement would be, though. So I would say at this point, the 5 teams that are out of the tournament consideration as of right now obviously have the most to gain. But a team like Iowa is probably just trying to maintain where they're at rather than move up a spot.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it is kind of as you were discussing that. This is probably a lame analogy because I'm not haven't been really involved in sports my whole life. But I remember foosball, and it didn't matter how you did the whole thing. If you won the game point, you won.
That's right.
You could have lost all 9 games up to that, but if you win game 10, you won. And right. That's kind of what this feels like to me. They have to win 4, but still,
Yeah.
I could see how that would be. The fact that they made it there still means there is a chance. It'll be hard, but there's still a chance.
If you are in the Big Ten, you have a chance. If you're, unless you have a postseason ban where the NCAA has, you've committed some infraction and they've banned you from postseason play. theoretically you're still, listen, these are still Division I athletes, and they get hot at the right time. Yeah, anything can happen, but certainly I would say very unlikely for those bottom 5 teams.
Right. So now my last question is this is about Luca Garza. What do you think is going to shape his legacy the most out of all this going forward?
Obviously, winning is the biggest thing. I think when you look at what Iowa has done from a win standpoint during his career, year one, terrible year, underachieved. It was the worst year, in my opinion, under Fran McCaffrey. I don't think it's even close. Even worse than his initial year here, because there were a lot more expectations during Luca's freshman year, and that wasn't on Luca. I think a lot of the seniors, just sort of, I shouldn't say even seniors, but a lot of the younger guys, Tyler Cook, Jordan Bohannon, they didn't mature the way people wanted them to, especially on the defensive end, heading into their sophomore year. But yeah, I mean, not much as far as winning that first year. Second year, you get to the NCAA tournament. You win the first round against Cincinnati, lose to Tennessee in overtime, and a huge comeback. Huge comeback for Iowa. They fell short. And then last year they had March Madness taken away because of COVID. So Luca Garza, I mean, if we want to be frank, Luca Garza has not done anything as far as winning postseason games. He's not coming back next year, even though the NCAA has this blanket waiver where seniors could come back for an extra year, basically for free, if their school has, I guess if their school agrees to it. I suppose that the school would have to agree to that. Of course, you would agree to that if you're Luca, but he's not coming back, and neither is Jordan Bohannon. So this is his last go around. And listen, I've always been a big Big Ten tournament fan. Some people say the Big Ten tournament's pointless. You play the regular season. Why do we need a Big Ten tournament? Let's just get to the big dance. Let's get to the NCAA tournament. I like the Big Ten tournament. I think it's exciting. I think part of maybe why I feel the way I do about the tournament is because I live in Ames, and Iowa State has had a whole lot of success down at their Big 12 tournament in Kansas City over the years, and I'm surrounded by it. Whereas if you look at Fran McCaffrey, the guy hasn't really had success in the Big Ten tournament since he's been here. I mean, his record is abysmal. So I think if Luca were able to lead Iowa to a Big Ten tournament title, that would do a lot for his legacy, I think, more than people think. The problem with it is if this team were to fail to get to the second weekend, in other words, fail to win your first 2 games and not get to the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8 or further, that's going to be damaging to his legacy. There's no question about it. I do think sometimes people place a little bit too much importance on the NCAA tournament. I mean, let me explain it to you this way. And this is, again, I know you understand this aspect of it, but you think about the tournament. It's one and done. I mean, you lose in the first round, you're done. You go home. I mean, if one, very rarely have we seen 2 seeds lose to 15 seeds. I mean, you're just not going to see that much. 1 seed's losing to, I think maybe that's only happened once. I think Virginia lost a couple years ago as a 1 seed, but you're not going to usually see that. But the problem is you go cold in your opening game as a 1 seed playing a 16 seed, and you lose. You go home. Your season's over. Your entire body of work for that entire year is from a fan perspective and from a overall takeaway from that season, it's going to be negative because you didn't make it past the first round. Fair or not, that's just how college basketball works. As opposed to you go to the NBA, you go to pro hockey, you go to the NFL's one and done too, but a little bit different with football. But you go to those other sports. A lot of those sports have 5 to 7 game series. Baseball's the same way. I mean, the Cubs play the Brewers, in the first round. They're playing best of 7. So, okay, you have a bad game. That's okay. You can make it up. It's not the way it is with March Madness. You lose, you are done. So I don't want to put too much importance on the tournament for Iowa, but certainly, unfortunately, the way things work in college hoops, they need to at least make the Sweet 16. I think even if you win a Big Ten title in the tournament, if they don't make the Sweet 16, it's a disappointment. He will still go down in my mind as the greatest player ever. I know people may argue with me about Ronnie Lester, Roy Marble, B.J. Armstrong, guys who played years before I was alive. I still think Luka being the all-time leading scorer and how dominant he has been. I still think, and remember, he led them back. Yeah, that bad freshman year, they were bottom of the Big Ten. He has helped lead them back to being an elite team. I mean, they're number 5 in the country. They started off number 5. They end up going full circle and being back at number 5 now. So you can't take that away from him. I still think he's the best player to ever play at Iowa, certainly the most dominant. But unfortunately, from a perception standpoint, he needs to get to the Sweet 16 or beyond. So that's my take, and I'll be interested to see how fans react if. And I don't want to see this because first of all, I want to see them advance to the Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four. But I will be interested to see how fans react if Iowa falls short of the Sweet 16, but they win the Big Ten tournament. Because, again, I think there is a division in the fan base of the importance of conference tournaments. And, there were rumors a couple months ago about teams opting out of conference tournaments, which I never believed was going to happen. But people thought, well, these teams don't want to take a risk of getting COVID during conference tournaments and then being disqualified for the NCAA tournament because they played in the Big Ten tournament the week before the NCAAs, you see.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't happen. Nobody's opting out. That was a bunch of coaches bluffing. And so I just don't know how other fans really feel about the Big Ten tournament. I know I love it. I love this time of year. I think it's great to see basketball on back-to-back days, and I think it's exciting for teams like, again, Nebraska that can maybe make a run. Who their season would be over if it weren't for the Big Ten tournament.
That's cool. I was just thinking as you're going, and then I thought, oh, COVID. I was like, hey, you know what? Let's get some hot wings and hang out and watch season. Oh, COVID.
You gotta get that vaccine, buddy boy.
Yeah, I know. We're
They're
not
opening up to more people. You're almost.
I'm almost old enough to be considered.
You were almost old enough for the previous tier.
Oh, okay. We can
65.
stop. You can stop.
No, but they did open it up. If you did hear that in the state of Iowa, they did open up to more people. So
yeah, well, Robin did inform me of that. We're probably going to wait until we get back. We have to head to Colorado, and then when we get back, we'll get our shots because we're heading out in 2 days. And I guess some people have had a little, just like mild reactions.
Yeah.
But I don't want to risk that if I got to be on the road for 2 days driving.
No, I understand.
So as soon as
I
we
understand
get back,
it.
we'll get our shots. But yeah, Robin did find out. I think she heard from you guys today or yesterday that it was opening up, and so she called, and so yeah, we're gonna get that done. So I miss hanging out. I miss hanging out, having hot wings, and I miss leaving the house.
What were your reactions to the newly issued CDC guidelines from today?
I didn't. I've been doing a ham radio contest, not a contest, a ham radio emergency communication thing all day, and so I haven't even paid attention to the news.
So here's basically, let me summarize what the CDC said today, and I want to get your reaction to this. Okay, the CDC has issued new, and I'm reading this from NPR.org. Okay, so I'm trying to stay as non-political of a news source as possible here. I'm sure there's some political affiliation there. But anyways, the CDC has issued new guidance for vaccinating people. The new guidance states that people who are fully vaccinated can visit indoors with other fully vaccinated people without wearing masks or social distancing. People are considered fully vaccinated 2 weeks after they've gotten the shot of Pfizer or Moderna, second shot of Pfizer or Moderna, or 2 weeks after receiving the single dose of Johnson & Johnson. Now, this is the interesting part, and there's apparently some controversy about this. I'm not sure why there's controversy. Vaccinated people can also visit unmasked with people from other households who are not yet vaccinated, as long as those people are at low risk of serious illness from the virus. However, vaccinated people should continue to wear masks when they're in public, avoid crowds, and take other precautions when gathering with unvaccinated people who are at high risk of serious illness. The new guidance also allows fully vaccinated individuals to forego testing and quarantining following a known COVID exposure as long as they are not experiencing symptoms. The CDC says this new guidance is a first step to returning to everyday activities. There's accumulating evidence to show that people who are fully vaccinated are less likely to become infected and also potentially, quote unquote, less likely to spread the virus to others. We know that people want to get vaccinated so they can get back to doing the things they enjoy with the people they love, CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky said in a statement. The new guidance is specific to freedoms that vaccinated people can resume in their own homes, but the agency warns that everyone, even those who are vaccinated, should continue to follow recommended guidance and guidelines in public settings, including wearing masks. They are not updating their travel guidance at this time. Existing travel guidance still applies in the case of fully vaccinated grandparents who are hoping to visit their low-risk family members, according to Walensky. So again, not quite sure what the controversy on this is. What's your first, maybe initial takeaway when hearing that updated information?
Okay, initially I kind of was a little worried, but then when you think about it statistically, I think it was like in the 90% of high 90s, mid 90s for the first two vaccines that came out of success. And I think the Johnson & Johnson is in the 70s or somewhere, 70 or 80s.
For serious illness.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I could see like if everybody's been vaccinated, the statistical odds of you giving it to each other, as long as when you are in public or around other people that haven't been vaccinated or stuff like that, you're doing what you need to do with masks and all that. I guess the numbers are particularly low. I don't know that I would get rid of the social distancing. It'd be nice not to have to wear a mask, stuff like that, or be in the same room. But I mean, still, maybe people could consider still not necessarily, being like 1 foot from somebody when they're having a conversation. Still, have a conversation. You sit in one chair and I'll sit 6 feet away. It still wouldn't necessarily, maybe it wouldn't matter. I don't know.
Well, that's the thing. I haven't read some of the controversy. I know there was a doctor on CNN today. I just saw the headline, defies common sense. Don't know what that means, how that defies common sense. I think the thing about it is the CDC has been open about the fact that we do not have conclusive data yet that tells us that absolutely 100% we know that the vaccine inhibits completely the spread of COVID-19.
Right.
So there is preliminary data out of Israel that indicates that may be the case, but nothing that's been confirmed that I'm aware of. But that I think you've got to look at it reasonably, because I've also heard people who say we're going to be wearing masks for years. Where is the logic behind a statement like that?
Right.
I mean, again, looking at it logically, not based off emotion, not based off of fear or what your feelings from the past calendar year, but based on logic. If 80% of the population is vaccinated and we achieve herd immunity, which again, we're talking every scientist on this planet, I'm exaggerating, of course, has stated that herd immunity is basically what will happen when that many people get vaccinated. What would be the purpose of continuing to wear masks all the time, other than, I guess, wearing a mask? It'd be the same as wearing a mask prior to COVID during flu season, just to have an extra protection or an extra shield from germs.
But I think at some point, and I do agree that, some things, I wouldn't say it was absurd. I did, like I say, when you first told me that's what they said, I kind of was taken aback. My biggest issue with it is if you give people an inch, they usually take a mile. And so it might be, I mean, we look at, even when we had a lot of restrictions, people were still partying, people were still doing things. And it might be That's my concern is people don't follow the rules. So if you lessen the rules more, there's going to be a lot more rule breaking because they're going to take it less seriously than they already do. That could be the chain reaction there.
Yeah.
Does it seem unreasonable? Like I say, when you first mentioned it, it kind of put me back. But I wouldn't say, like you said, that one person said they're out of their mind. I kind of see that if you have responsible people and they're still going through the normal messages, hey, the normal things. Hey, how you been feeling? No, I don't. I feel great. I've had my vaccine shot. All that great hunky dory. But what about the person or the family that's had all their vaccine shots and then somebody gets sick and they actually end up getting it after all, but they assume they don't because they've already had their vaccine, so couldn't possibly be COVID. And then you go hang out with them, and then you're one of that lucky 5%, and now you get it because now we stopped acknowledging if you do still show symptoms of sickness, maybe still use some precaution or it's like did they cover what it sounds like they got rid of that. It's you don't as long as you had the vaccine, everything's hunky dory, and I think that might be a little dangerous.
Yeah.
Not because of it being dangerous in general. It's just because you give people an inch, they'll take a mile, and it's. I always go back to that one quote from Men in Black.
What's your quote from Men in Black?
I won't get it exactly, but people aren't smart. Person is smart, but people aren't smart. You remember when he says, "Why do you tell people about all the aliens?" And he's like,
Oh, yes.
"No,
Okay.
because they're smart." And he says, "No. People as a whole aren't smart." But an individual can be smart. An individual can do the right things and make good decisions based on the guidelines you gave them. But if you give them too much, you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. That's the only concern I have with it. I think, yeah, it makes perfect sense. But I think when they say that, now it'll be like, we got the virus, we can do whatever we want. And they'll miss all the points of where, no, you still should wear a mask in public and you should still do this and you should still do that and those kind of things. It's like,
Right.
That's the only concern I have with it. Otherwise, I think I'm looking as soon as once I got the picture, the image in my mind, it's like, yeah, we'll get our shots, we can hang out, we can do stuff, we can have wings and be normal again.
Right back to the wings, aren't we?
Yeah,
And by the way,
I love my wings.
We're talking about wings. I am in love with Wingstop. And shout out to Seneca Wallace here in Ames. Of course, we're from the Hawkeye of the storm, so we're broadcasting from the heart of the storm, Cyclone Nation here in Ames. But Seneca Wallace, former Iowa State quarterback, opened up a Wingstop here in Ames. I'm telling you, better than B-Dubs, better than I think it's the best wings in town. And if somebody else has an opinion or a wing place they enjoy here in Ames, let me know, because the pandemic has made me. I'm a wing fanatic now.
I still don't think you like them hot enough.
I had the mango habanero from. Have you had the mango habanero from Wingstop?
I think I've had the hottest stuff at Wingstop. It still wasn't hot enough for me.
Okay,
But I like their wings. Don't get me wrong. But I want to be like.
You want to be in the hospital for that, not
I
COVID.
want my gums bleeding from the acid eating them away. It's. I guess actually hot sauce is actually not acid, it's alkali, but you get my point.
so you've had the atomic from Wingstop.
What's that? Oh yeah.
The atomic.
Yeah, I'm sure I have.
You didn't think they were that hot?
It didn't stand out.
Interesting.
Now, don't get me wrong. I do like their wings. I do like their wings, but it's.
Well, I think you and me are. That's the thing. I think you and I are different in the respect that mango habanero is hot for me. Not like I've had hot. I mean, you've had me try hot. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not like I don't know what hot is like. But if I'm going to enjoy some wings, mango habanero at Wingstop is probably the hottest I'm going to have. Right. I like more of like a sweet Asian chili, or like they have a spicy Korean. Really good. I mean, the flavor is just out of this world.
I have to admit, as I'm getting older, I'm finding that the milder ones I do enjoy a little more. But there's still something about, I think it's an adrenaline rush,
Well, and let's be honest, the boneless wings suck.
Oh, boneless wings suck anywhere.
You notice the women in our lives, they love boneless.
Yeah, and
Isn't it? Listen, isn't it all just filler?
yeah, it's not. Yeah,
It's not
it's
even.
like
It's not even all chicken. It can't
it's
be.
like why are we spending this kind of money? We'll just get some hot sauce and buy chicken nuggets from
Right.
McDonald's and.
Oh yeah, no, I look forward to being able to resume. And listen, it's going to be a gradual process. Anybody who thinks that it's going to be we're back to normal, and that's why I think I had no problem with what the CDC had to say today. I'm not going to endorse it or not endorse it, but I think it was based on science. I maybe some people are gonna disagree with that. I guess if you disagree with me, you disagree with the CDC. I don't know how it's not based on science. Um, Again, the advice or the guidelines were that if you have had the vaccine and it's been 2 weeks since your last shot of the vaccine, you can spend time with other people who are vaccinated without masks. I don't. I guess I don't know why. Like Johnson and Johnson, for instance, John, you talked about efficacy, and I think it's like 70% effective against severe illness. That is against severe illness, and let's remember this: the Johnson & Johnson vaccine was 100% effective in trials against hospitalizations and deaths. So not to say it's not possible once you get a much, much, much larger sample size, but the sample size of these trials was significant. 100% effective against hospitalizations and deaths. So even if you do fall on the wrong side of that 70 some percent, John, with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, you are not going, obviously anything can happen, but you have like a 99.999% chance of
Not dying.
not even being hospitalized. Not even being hospitalized, if I
Right.
can say that. So again, we can't make decisions. You can't make decisions for someone else. But to me, the guidance made sense. I guess my thinking on it is two people who are fully vaccinated. What reason would there be to wear a mask at that point?
And I think it like I said, I think initially once I got past it and thought about it, if it's all about the numbers statistically. But again, I would also I'm hesitant to say if you were the one thing that I do have an issue with is they said if you were exposed to somebody that had COVID, if you've had the shot, you don't have to necessarily quarantine or something like that. That concerns me because you still don't know. That means if you're 70%, that's 30%. You could still get it and carry it and then give it to others that don't have it. So I don't know. Maybe
Well,
that's
and
one thing that
that's yeah, and I think that might be the CDC seems to be leaning towards the data that we got from Israel that a fully vaccinated person is not immune to giving the virus to someone else, but the likelihood of it is very low.
right.
They have not come out and said that. I mean, it's been again, they don't have data to back it up,
Right.
substantiated data to back that up. But it does sound like that's where they're leaning. But it's just going to be gradual. It's going to be a
Right.
situation where everybody's going to have to make decisions on their own, as they have the past year. Um, Slowly, you'll be able to start spending time with friends and family in your private dwellings, in small numbers, perhaps with masks on if you haven't already. Then maybe it's a situation where you're able to no longer feel the need to wear masks indoors. You're still going to have to wear them in public. But again, I think once we hit herd immunity, I guess I don't know particularly. I don't particularly know why we would still be wearing masks after we achieve herd immunity. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, people die from the flu too. I'm not comparing this to the flu, but I'm saying at that point, I think one thing that's always I've equated this to is this is a new disease for us, and so I think that statistically, as more people just the sad part is a lot of the people that were more susceptible to die, um, or get it, they've already gotten it and had the worst possible thing happen to them, death. But I mean, I mean, it's like when wasn't it basically N1H1? Wasn't the flu in
H1 H1N1.
H1N1? Yeah, the flu in 1918. I mean, that was a flu. It was a flu in 1918, and look how many
Spanish.
people died from it.
Yeah.
And then my understanding is that's the same one that came back around in 29, and the numbers were much, much less.
Was it the
Um,
same one?
I think so. I'm pretty sure it was. I Googled it, and it's, of course, Google's
Well,
not always right. But
well, I just look at what happened in the Spanish flu. People were wearing masks.
right.
Like people wore masks. And now again, I wasn't
Well,
around back
that's
then.
what I mean. And some people wore some masks during it coming back in 20, what
I
was it,
know, but I mean
2008?
very very minimally.
Right. It was like when they went to a doctor's office and stuff. But as a
We should
whole,
do
we
it. I
didn't.
think you should probably be doing, honestly, shouldn't we be wearing masks when you go to the doctor anyways? I mean, doesn't that
Probably.
make sense? Doesn't that just make sense? I mean, COVID aside.
Yeah, probably. But I
So
guess that's my point. And if it was the same, and I think it was, the one that happened in 1918 is the same one that happened in 2008. I'm pretty sure, but if I'm not right, don't shoot me. But my point is, they we had to do masks, we had to do all that stuff and everything. But when it came back around now, and uh, not quite 100 years at the time, but still, it was like, I think the entire world was like 12,000 people died or something. You
yeah,
know, insig not insignificant. That's a terrible word to use for this, but
not
so
downplaying the deaths, but
right,
just
but
looking at it from a perspective of
massively less. And obviously, it was. I think a lot of us too is genetics. I mean, after it's some things, if it's well, it's the herd immunity, and it's all these things which I don't understand, and I'm not claiming to, but yeah, I don't see why over time. I mean, it's like, look at the diseases, measles, mumps. I mean, we get vaccinated for them and stuff, but I mean, there's a lot of them that uh, chicken pox. I should get vaccinated for that. I've never had chicken pox. Never have. I've not been vaccinated for it. At my age, it'd be bad if I got them. But that's my point. There was a point in time where chicken pox was a big deal. And I've gone through my entire life going to school, doing all this stuff. And because they didn't require it when I was a kid, I don't even think they had a vaccine for chicken pox when I was a kid. It was like, everybody gets sick, put all your kids in the same room, give them chicken pox so they can get it done and get over with,
yep,
right?
yep. Which, by the way, there were still people clamoring for that at the beginning of COVID.
Oh, were there?
People were
Oh yeah,
having
the
COVID
COVID parties.
parties.
Is that what those were
Yeah,
about?
yeah.
Yeah. So, but I guess that's my point is, at some point, statistically, the odd of you dying from the disease or getting the disease, you can always live your life in fear, and that's fine if you want to do that. But
And again, we're not talking about right now. I mean,
no, I'm not talking
for the
about right. I'm
record,
talking,
yes,
2-3 years
you
from
and
now.
our family still
Right.
practices
Right.
the
No,
utmost social
I'm talking
distancing.
because, like, when you said, people will say
Yeah, long term.
we're going to wear masks forever.
Right.
Why? I mean, we haven't for diseases that have been just as bad or not worse. And once we've come with a way to deal with them, we don't have to wear masks anymore.
I don't want to get. I don't want to get in. We won't get into a political discussion. I always have to preface everything that I say on here because I don't want it to be interpreted that way. But I want to read you a couple. As soon as this data was, or I shouldn't say the data, the guidelines from the CDC was released. They were released today. Of course, you have the what's the best word? The cesspool or the dumpster fire that is social media.
Yeah.
And people and people who want to comment on social media and make a name for themselves on social media. John, I'm going to read you a couple comments. First of all, what is your reaction when a genuine person, not for a political ideology or political agenda, says we need to wear masks, we need to protect each other, we need to try to social distance? What is your reaction when someone reacts to that by saying, "Oh, go hide in your basement"? What is your reaction to that?
Well, and that's the thing is I don't want to say that when I made the comment earlier, I said we don't want to live in fear. I'm not equating people that say that now to that. I'm saying that, 5 years down the road, then when this is way behind us and the statistically odds of it ever coming back, then yeah, we don't have to be
Right.
necessarily living, because if we were to live in fear about that, we'd be living in fear about it, everything. We wouldn't get in our car and drive. I'm saying 5 years from now,
Yeah.
when the numbers are so low, it's like you got, you know,
So what do you have
1,000
to
people a year get it kind of
what do
thing.
you have to say to someone who that's their reaction? To someone who's
Um,
trying to someone who's trying to protect their neighbor and
I
show love to their neighbor or their family by not infecting them.
I think that you shouldn't. No, I think that right now, I mean, I hate wearing a mask. I hate it. I don't think anybody likes wearing a mask, but it's the respectful thing to do. It's the right thing to do. Even if we don't know exactly how helpful it is in some cases, because actually, I have my beliefs of how helpful I think it is. I think any kind of barrier, even if it helps 5%, is help one. Even if it only helps 1%, it's still 1%.
Yep.
Okay, so regardless of do masks help or not help, if there's any chance that they help or at all, I think we should do it. And I don't think we should judge anybody for saying we should do it.
Yeah.
I think that's the respectful thing to do. Um, I remember that when this all started, I went into a True Value to get some stuff, and I didn't have a mask. I mean, when this started, especially here in Iowa, uh, it wasn't like what was going on in New York. It wasn't like what was going on in California. We didn't see any of that. There wasn't anybody that even had it in our county yet. I mean, it wasn't here. Yet I went into True Value and I was looking at something, and an old fella came up to me and he was talking to me. He was a really nice guy, and he didn't work there, and he was trying to be helpful, and he was right in my face, just talking. But at one time I felt slightly concerned because there could be some risk, but at the same time I'm thinking I haven't really, at this point, this was when this all started, I hadn't really been taking precautions. I hadn't been, social distancing. I mean, March 12th, I think we went over Autumn and Mike's and hung out because there was no lockdown. There was nothing. There was, like I say, it wasn't New York. Okay. But
Right.
my point is, I did not know if I had it, carried it, or whatever. And even though I was in the store keeping my distance from people, this old fella came up and decided to chat with me. So what went through my mind was, what if I had it and gave it to him? He was old enough, he could have died. So it was literally the day after that, I did not go out with a mask. I mean, I did not go out at all. I did not go out unless I had a mask, because that was an example where I couldn't control my surroundings. Even though I was staying far away from people in the store and stuff like that, somebody came up to me. And I just think, I don't know. Now I'm off on a wild tangent. But no, I don't think you should fault anybody for saying, let's wear a mask. I think it's the considered thing to do. Again, in the beginning, when it wasn't really here yet, um, I was probably like a lot of people and didn't take it seriously. But to not take it seriously at this point is just being naive.
Well, and that's the thing. Again, it comes down to, do you care about your fellow man? I mean,
Yeah.
do you care about you care about anybody but your own freedoms and your own, there's lots of things. It's like people don't want to have to wear a mask, but yet do you observe the speed limit? Do you observe the seatbelt laws? And frankly, if you're not willing to wear a mask, I would be I wouldn't be shocked to find out that you don't wear your seatbelt. I mean, because simple things like that, it's the small things that really show how much do you care about your neighbor. Listen to these two comments, and we'll move on and end this thing. I won't give this person's name, but this is a social media comment. In response to the CDC guidelines, this is the response from this citizen. Normal? Question mark. We never left normal. We don't lock down. We see our family, friends, and neighbors and entertain regularly as always. When you come to my house, Leave masks and social distancing at home because they are not allowed here. Hugs, kisses are practiced as we have always done.
Good for them.
Yeah. I won't be going over to
that's
their house.
yeah, that's okay, that's their right. But when they now go out in public, it's no longer their right. If they want to do that at their house, that's fine. But I mean, I don't know. It's you're not trying to get, again, we don't want to get political, but my opinion on this is freedom. If you do something that takes away from someone else, that's entitlement. That's not freedom.
Yeah.
Self-entitlement.
And listen to this comment. How about this? We take back our freedoms. We decide who we let in our businesses. We decide where we go without a mask. If you're scared, stay home. Here's the deal, John. Let's go back to the fact that it comes down to how much you care about one another. And by the way, it's not as simple as if you're scared, stay home.
People have to go to the store. People have to go buy stuff. People have to live.
And here's the deal. We all want to get back to a normal for everyone to be able to go back to our normal activities, being able to go out to eat, go to a movie theater, gather together at a religious service. We want to be able to do that. But if we say, okay, the scared people stay home, or what I believe the sensible people, they're the ones who would be staying home, and the people who don't care are out without masks, those people are just going to continue to spread it, and this thing's going to go on longer and longer and longer. So it's not a matter of you do what you want to do, I do what I want to do, because what you do affects me, and what I do affects you. That's just the bottom line with this virus.
Well, and that is a concern. It's like when Texas said they were opening up completely. It's like, okay, fine, but the issue is, it's like if you build a house and you move in without the roof on it. It's not ready. All your stuff is going to get destroyed. You got to finish the house first before you move in. Otherwise, you're going to end up with all your stuff wet, soaked, and thrown out in the trash. I'm sorry, I mean, that's a stupid, but I mean, it's like, let's just finish it. We're not that far. Let's just get this done right.
Yeah. I agree with you. It's just a matter of us coming together and trying to care about one another. And again, use common sense that the sooner we may have to make sacrifices now, but if we can resist the instant gratification that is the world that we live in, we can get back to normal sooner rather than later. And listen, people who know me, I am a social person. I want to be out. I want to be doing things. This is not easy for someone like me. Okay. I've talked to some people during this virus that love being home all the time and not having to be around people. They're introverts. That's just who they are. And that's fine. That's fine. But this is not enjoyable for someone like me. But again, we are here and we have to do what's best for one another. And again, what's best for you is what's best for me. So I implore everybody listening to this to wear your masks. Again, as much as you can. Whenever you go out in public, wear your masks, okay? And certainly wear your masks when you are not around when you're around someone who has not been vaccinated. And if you haven't been vaccinated, you should always be wearing your masks. And again, even after that, it's not up for me, it's not up for you, it's not up for any of us to say who should be doing what. You got to make decisions, but just please be smart. Because again, the sooner we can get through this, the sooner we can have all of our lives back to the normal, at least a form of normal. And listen, John, I think you'd agree with this. It's really not that far off.
I don't think it is. And honestly, I want to also reiterate, throughout this whole process, I've been far from perfect on how I've obeyed protocol. Like I say in the beginning, we only did exactly what the state told us because, well, in Iowa, we had no restrictions. So we could, in our minds, in good conscience, say we're doing things that we need to do. Meanwhile, people were dying by the minute in New York. Um, so, at that time, why did I only do what Iowa said we had to do? Was because we weren't seeing any consequences for it. We weren't seeing people have it. And even during the summer, we went to restaurants, we ate outside, we wore our masks, we made sure for the most part. There was a few times we hung out together, but we didn't like, we weren't in each other's faces. We knew that you were working at your job. You don't deal with people with your job, so you're pretty well isolated. I work from home, so we're isolated. So we've been isolated for 2 weeks. You've been isolated for 2 weeks, and so then we go, to the lake. But that's my point. We made sure that we could do that. We made sure that we isolated ourselves.
Yeah.
But as it got worse,
And in our defense, you're also outside.
yeah, we were outside. But when we were on that lake, we saw boats with people that had 12 and 15 people on them,
Yep.
all shoulder to shoulder. And there's no chance that they were all isolated before they went on that trip.
No.
But, that was the summer. Things, it was bad during last winter, January, yeah, not January, April. You know what I'm saying? When this all started, March, April, May. But then like I say, it took a while to get into Iowa. And then by the time summer came up, it kind of, went back a little bit for, the numbers started to go down a little bit. So again, even when we did our trip in the summer, it still didn't feel like this imminent danger. It was it when we really started seeing it bad, that's when it was kind of a wake up call. And while we were still dealing by summertime, we were, me and you, we stopped hanging out. We haven't visited Autumn and Mike. We stopped.
Even outside. Even
Even outside.
outside.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, and then because, well, it was getting colder, you couldn't even go eat at the restaurants outside anymore because it was too cold. So we stopped. It's been since what, November? Pretty much. That's when we actually, for us, have been completely isolated. So I'm not going to say that we did everything perfectly, but we did it. And maybe that's where some of these people are coming from. And maybe they haven't seen it. Maybe they haven't seen it. So that's why it's like, all the hugs and kisses and all that. Maybe they haven't seen it. But November, personally, November, in a span of 3 weeks, the entire time of COVID, from January to November, I knew three people that got it personally, that I knew in real life that got it. One person died. He was elderly, uh, very old, had very bad health. He passed away. He was in a nursing home, a rest home, or senior citizen home, whatever they call them these days. There was another person. She got it. She was in a rest home. She came out fine. Then there was a person in the ham club that got it. He had taken that malaria drug, whatever it's called, when he was in the military, so they knew there wouldn't be any reaction if he took it now. They gave it to him. It seemed to work for him within a day. He was like, fine. Now, I don't, that Britain's on that drug because she has mixed connective tissue. And that drug is not something that you would just take for the fun of it, So, but anyway, that was it. That's in the entire time from when it started to November. That was it. And then November happened, and in 2 weeks, 17 people I know personally in real life got it. And some of them, it was like they got it, they were mildly sick. Some of them were laid up for weeks. Um, and one of them actually did die out of that 17. But then also, just in the last 3 weeks, one other person from our ham club got it. And he was, I think, in his late 60s. He didn't seem that old to me. He passed away. So, I mean, I have literally, like I say, up until November, it still felt like, okay, we're doing, like I say, summer we did our thing, we did precautions, and then but we always wore our masks. By that time, we were still wearing our masks, we doing everything right. But when
But
November
it
hit,
wasn't as real to
it
you
wasn't as real. I
until
mean,
you
three
had people
people in
affected.
in what, 8 months? No, November, 9 months, 10 months. Three
Okay.
people in 10 months, 9 months. That's it. And then month 10, wham,
Right.
just friends we got in Arizona, friends we got in New Mexico, friends we got down by Fort Dodge, of several friends here in Newton. And then, like I say, even just this last few weeks, one of the friends here in Newton from our ham club, and he was older, but he wasn't. I didn't ever think of him as having poor health. In fact, what got him was he was in the hospital. He ended up, his heart failed after 2 weeks of fighting the disease. His heart failed. But he didn't really. He. It's just sad because that really brought it home. This is real. This is killing people, and when you see it, it makes you realize, let's just do this right for
Yeah.
the next few months.
And I'm not trying to put us up on a pedestal, but we were masking and avoiding doing anything really inside before then, before it really became real to us personally. Because I mean, I didn't know anybody that really came down with it for months, kind of like you, until later on in the year. But we were still taking the precautions. But there are still people, John, who even after this past year and what's happened around the world, who still refuse to even wear a mask, social distance. It's beyond me. Um, and that's the thing too. Things are improving, so you wonder, are people going to let down their guard early? Certainly not the time to let down your guard right now, because the numbers can spike back up. There's not enough people vaccinated yet to where you could even begin to say it's safe to wear a mask outside of when you're out in public. They just haven't. Um, so yeah, I'm with you. I know when we took that camping trip up to Okoboji, and again, we're outside the whole time. We're able to social distance, and we never were really inside unless we were going to the grocery store or something. And of course, we're masking up when we're doing that. But then, we saw, you and I both saw, and I remember observing that, how many people, like you said, were on boats, crowded. They're not in the same household, not wearing masks, in close quarters. I mean, we're talking dozens of people,
Hmm.
not one family. And it's just it's sad to see that what's going to happen here is that this pandemic's going to run its course, and there are still going to be a large number of people that never wore masks, and never social distanced, and they're going to, unfortunately, I'm not saying anybody deserves to die from this because they don't, but there are going to be innocent people who did do that die, as opposed to, and again, this is anecdotal evidence, but people who chose not to wear masks and had to, well, my freedom is important and this and that. They're the ones that are, unfortunately, might get unscathed. That's the uh, unjust world we live in.
Well, it's kind of like drunk drivers. I mean, how many times does a drunk driver get killed in a
Yeah,
wreck, but the people they hit die?
but you'd
Um,
never defend a drunk driver.
no, you wouldn't. You
You know,
wouldn't.
but yet people try to defend the decision to not
Right.
social distance and wear masks. So
The one thing I wanted to say, and this will be my last thought on it, and again, I didn't take a lot of this seriously in the beginning either, but I have personally never known in my entire memory of any one year where maybe one person, you know, I think there was one year that we actually all got bronchitis and we were diagnosed with bronchitis. And that's the only time that we actually went to the doctor and we were so sick that we knew we had bronchitis, right? But in my entire life, I don't know of anyone that's actually maybe 4 or 5 years where I know of maybe one person actually getting the flu and getting sick, like home ridden sick, not like hospital sick. And I don't know anybody personally in my entire life that's ever died from the flu. Yet COVID is a different animal. Obviously, it's not the flu, but my point is, it's
Yeah,
it's
anybody who's
not
still
it's
anybody who's still trying to
definitely
say the
a
flu is the same as COVID is still
I
living in a hole.
yeah, I know two people that have died from this, put in the hospital from this. I know people that have been put in the. I've never known anybody put in the hospital from the flu in my entire life. So, because some people try to twist and say, well, they didn't die of COVID. They died of some underlying condition. Well, okay. Well, COVID was the straw that broke the camel's back. Okay. So let's put that. I have never known anybody going in the hospital from the flu. I know people that have gone in the hospital from COVID,
Yeah.
and they were there because of COVID. Even if you don't want to say they died because of COVID, they were there because of COVID. So, all right, I'm going to shut up now.
No,
But
I think it's all valid points. I think we've talked about this longer than I anticipated we would. That's okay. Wear your stinking masks still. How you choose to follow the CDC guidelines, that's ultimately up to you. Especially once you get vaccinated, some people may choose to, again, associate with other people who are vaccinated or even those who don't have a underlying health condition who's unvaccinated. That's your decision. But all we can say is the more precautions you take now, the sooner we can get back to normal. And we will get back to normal. That's what people have to remember. This is not going to go on for years, forever. I've been saying it ever since this thing started. Wear your masks, and we can return to some form of normal. As it relates to Iowa basketball, Friday. They play Friday, so the winner of the game on Wednesday, which begins at approximately 7 o'clock Central Time, 7 o'clock Iowa time between Nebraska and Penn State. Winner of that game will play Wisconsin on Thursday evening at approximately 8 o'clock. Winner of the Wisconsin game will play Iowa Friday at 8 for a spot in the semis, which will be on CBS. By the way, the Iowa game Friday night at approximately 8 o'clock will be televised by BTN, Big Ten Network. Semifinals will be televised by CBS in the afternoon on Saturday, and then Sunday for the championship game. And we'll see. I may hop back on, and we'll see if they get to the championship game, I may hop on Saturday evening and do a short show. But let's just hope we get something to cheer about for the Big Ten tournament, because it's been years since Iowa has had success in the tournament, since really the Steve Alford days. Iowa is due, and they've got the double bye. They've got a decent draw. They're going to do it in a year. Do it this year and get themselves prepared for March. And by the way, best wishes to Joe Wieskamp. Speedy recovery. It was good to see Jack Nunge on the sidelines for the game on Sunday after his meniscus surgery. But again, speedy recovery. Best wishes to Joe Wieskamp. And we hope to see him back on the court this coming Friday against, most likely, Wisconsin. We'll talk to you soon, John. Thanks for hopping on here this evening. And we are starting this YouTube venture here as it relates to the podcast, and also storycounty.news. We'll be trying to integrate YouTube and different forms of social media. We're trying to get the podcast onto Spotify and these different outlets as well, but YouTube first. So appreciate you with your help and everything you've done to help the podcast come along, help the website come along, and we'll have you on again.
thank you, Corey. I had fun. Have a good night.
All right, week 152 of Brada's Branded Thoughts. We'll talk to you next week. Go Hawks.